So I don't usually do I say so a lot, don't I? I do. This is a casual one, so you're stuck with it. I don't usually do videos that are not flat out reviews of films, but this time I'm going to, because why not? It's my YouTube channel, by gum, and I'll waste your time more so than usual with this. So I live in an area that affords me the ability to attend shows from Exhumed Films. Exhumed Films is a collective, a group, a partnership that's been around for better than 25 years, 25 years, 20 years, better than 2 decades. That'll be accurate. In the Philadelphia area, putting on retro, predominantly horror, but retro film screenings. And they have done shows around the country and done some really amazing things. And if you like retro movies and you like old horror movies and old trashy movies and old cult movies like I do, Exhumed Films should be a friend of yours that you know about. Their shows are totally worth traveling to. I say all this because I just attended, days before I'm recording this, the annual, manyth annual Exhumed Films 24-hour horrorthon held at the Colonial Theater in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. That is the theater most famously known for being the theater featured in the original Blob film, and it's a beautiful old single screen theater that has been mostly retained as it originally was. So it feels like you're stepping back in time when you go here. And this horrorthon is a tradition for a lot of friends of mine. I've only been doing it, this is only my third time. I have friends who've been doing it since the beginning and for years and years. And for whatever reason, for years, it was hard for me to get to. It was always occurring at the same time. I had work obligations or something like that. But I finally went, and I'm never not going to go now. So what is the 24-hour horrorthon? Well, it's 24 hours long, and it involves horror. It is all 35 millimeter, with very rare exceptions. It is 24 hours long, and it is a non-stop assault on the senses of horror films and cult movies and horror film trailers. I'm not going to tell you all the films that played during this because honestly I don't remember them all, but I'll give you the idea of what this is like if you've never done it before. So it goes like this. Tickets go on sale months in advance. They regularly sell out rather quickly, so you really kind of have to jump on them. They give you admission to the event. And basically the deal is people line up super early because they want to get their seat. Now the Colonial Theater holds several hundred, better than 500, 600, I don't know. It's a big old movie theater. And I believe they sell just about every seat in it. It's got a huge balcony, huge main floor, nice big screen, and gorgeous lobby and gorgeous upper lobby. And they sell out very, very early, and people get in line really, really early, increasingly ridiculously early, so that they can get the seat that they want. Now, you're going to get a seat. If you have a ticket, you're going to get in. But for a 24-hour show, you always kind of want to pick a seat that meets your needs. You know, screen size, location in the theater, location from the bathroom, or whatever. So people get in line really, really early, as I did the other day. And it's a social event because if you go to more than one of these, you see people you know. And if you go to a lot of the films in the area that Exhumed puts on, it's a lot of familiar faces. And then there are people that you only really see like once a year or twice a year, or you only see at Exhumed events and things like that. So that was the case for me. I wound up standing in line with a friend of mine who I only really see a couple times a year at these kind of shows. And it's great to catch up and, you know, kind of guess what the films are going to be and talk about, you know, what your strategy is. And did you get a lot of sleep? Did you not sleep? Have you eaten? Have you not eaten? What's your plan? Everybody kind of has a game plan with this. The first time I went, people were asking online in advance, do you have any tips? Any tips for how I should, you know, prepare myself to try to get through as many movies as possible? Because the way they do this is they'll have a little, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but hey, I just survived a 24-hour horrorthon. The brain is not as sharp as or dull as it normally is. So they basically open up with an intro, and then after that, there are 3 or 4 trailers before each movie that all point to what you're about to see thematically. You don't know what they're going to show in advance. It is all a secret. They'll give you a sheet. I actually have it right here. So they give you a program just before you go in, standing in line. And they always have a really cool poster, nicely designed, and they'll give you a list of sort of like some tips and a schedule of events and clues for the movie, but they don't tell you what the movies are, and a list on the back of all the films they've ever played. So part of the deal is they also hand out a ballot right there, and it shows you movie 1 through 15, 15 films, 15 features were present, and you put your name on the top, and you do your best guess. Now, some people have lists of all the films they've ever played. Some people are like real movie geniuses, and some are like me and pretty knowledgeable, but, you know, the brain doesn't retain it all. And you write your best guess, and whoever gets the most right, or the 4 people who get the most right, win really, really cool prizes that Exhumed gathers. So you're waiting in line, you're chatting with friends, you're filling out your ballot, you're like, oh, you're excitedly talking about what these films might be. The clues are usually pretty vague, so I can never get many correct. And I usually don't even bother to play. Next year I probably will, because this year it turned out I probably would have gotten at least a fistful of them right, but you never know. So, and then they have rules, and the big rule is no talking, which is great because we all love films and not listening to people cracking wise and yapping during them. So you wait in line a really long time, a little bit beforehand. They go through and they hand out the ballots and they check your tickets to make sure you have them, and they give you the free program, which also, nicely enough, folds out into a free mini poster, which is pretty cool. So a souvenir booklet in the truest sense of the form. They have all the schedule broken down by time. The way it worked this time is the theater opened at 10 a.m. People were in line many hours before that. Theater opens at 10 a.m. so you can go in, you can put your stuff down, and people respect that. You put your stuff down in the seat you want. That's great. One less thing to worry about. You go in, you get food. There's a merch table where they sell the event shirt. Those huge line for that. They sell DVDs and Blu-rays and cool Exhumed Films merch. There's always usually a raffle with really cool prizes in it. And it's just the excitement. And we all realize this is the socializing time we're really going to have. Before the show is the socializing time, because everybody is serious about watching the films. Most of us are in it to win it. And there really isn't any space between the films. As I said, there is trailers, and then they show a film. And as soon as the film is over, it's more trailers in the film. The screen never goes dark unless there's a problem, which very rarely happens. The screen never goes dark for the duration of the show. So at the appointed time, everybody gets in, sits down. Dan from Exhumed, who's a great MC, comes out and he welcomes everybody, goes over the rules, explains how it's all going to work, gives some interesting facts or whatever. They give away a lot of prizes based on the wristband that you get that allows you to come and go. They all have numbers on the wristband, so just random number generator. They call a bunch of names, and people just for showing up, you can win really cool limited edition original posters, like Mondo posters and things like that. Oftentimes signed by multiple creatives associated with the film. So it'll be like the director of a film and some of the cast or the crew or the makeup effects artist or the composer, all kinds of stuff like that. It's really, really expensive, valuable prizes they just give away. And then you're in it. You're in it to win it. So I'm going to regale you with some tales of what went on. But again, I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing. And some of it should be left to the imagination. Some of it really should be like theater. Like you kind of had to be there to experience it. So first up, the first clue, I did guess this one correctly. The first film was Targets, Peter Bogdanovich's first film that is so good. In my opinion, maybe at Boris Karloff's best performance, more or less playing himself. And it's a film that parallels this young, squeaky clean Vietnam vet guy who seemingly has the perfect life, who just decides he's just going to kill his family and then start shooting random people. So it's super dark, based around the assassinations and the Charles Whitman and all kinds of stuff that was going on around this time. The film was released in 68, I believe, 67, 68. And that goes back and forth with Boris Karloff, essentially as the same Boris Karloff, but he's called Orlok, I believe. And he's a horror star who's just tired of making cheap, dumb horror movies and announces he's going to retire, but agrees to go to this one last public appearance at a drive-in to promote his newest movie, which is The Terror, a film he actually did make. And there's a lot of really great vintage scenes at this California Pacific Theaters drive-in during the show. And then when these two, I'm not going to give anything away, but when these two storylines kind of combine when two storylines come together, it's at this drive-in. So it's an outstanding movie. It's a great movie. The first time I'd seen it on the big screen, as I said, it's all 35 millimeter. And then we went into one movie after the other. I'm going to give you some random thoughts and not go through it all. But what's fun is that you sit there and it's always a matter too of, okay, well, I need to eat at some point. The theater concession is open for just about the whole show. But if you want to get real food, luckily in Phoenixville, there is a ton of restaurants and bars and pubs and takeout places and stuff surrounding this theater in this little downtown area. They're not open all night, though, is the key. So after a certain hour, you're that's it for real food. Then you're just stuck with concessions, which are great. But if you've ever done any kind of a movie marathon, after a while, no matter how good the popcorn and soda and candy are, you kind of want something other than popcorn, soda, and candy. So it's always the thing when I'm at this marathon where it's like, it's not like, it is, where I'm sitting there and I'm like, please let the next one be a movie I don't want to watch. Like, I'm there to see movies I've never seen before. I'm the kind of guy that at this point in my cinemania, I want to see something I've never seen as opposed to something I have seen. So if Night of the Living Dead comes up, it's like, this is an outstanding movie. It's great. I love it. but this is the time for me to go to the bathroom, and this is the time for me to get something to eat. Sleep is also a question too. As I was saying before, I went to my first, people were talking about online, what do you do? Any tips? And it's always like, some people were like, you need to eat this kind of a diet X number of days before the show. You need to bring this kind of medication, not medication, bring like Imodium or something. Bring something so you don't have to go to the bathroom as much. Drink this kind of stuff. Eat this kind of stuff. Blah, blah, blah. And I never do any of that. I didn't even particularly get a great night's sleep beforehand. I was too excited to go. So I just kind of take it as it comes. As the Doors once sang, I take it easy, baby. I take it as it comes. And I will start off with popcorn, soda, and some candy, and kind of pick at that for a long time until I get up to the movie where it's like, okay, I can miss this. Or I look at, it's no phone use, it's respectful, it's intended to be at least respectful theater behavior for the whole thing. But once the trailers hit, people will get up and they'll chat a little bit and they'll look at their phones, and that's like your tiny 10-minute, if even that, break between films. And I'll look at the clock and I'll be like, oh, we're getting closer to the point where the restaurants are going to close. So for me, it was barreling through, and I was kind of getting ready to go, and then 1981's Ghost Story came up, which I hadn't seen in years, and I've been kind of itchy to watch again. I saw it as a kid, and it kind of disturbed me, and I've been wanting to watch it again, and that came up, and I'm like, oh, I can't go right now. Maybe the next one will be something I don't want to see. So I sat through Ghost Story, and it was really interesting, and funny enough, I realized again that it was partially shot very close to where I grew up. So there's a scene in the movie at a bus station, which was a bus station that I went to as a kid, and I ate in the restaurant attached to the bus station, so that was kind of cool. They played Murders in the Rue Morgue, the Bela Lugosi version of Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is a great old creeper. They played a movie called The Killing of Satan, which is this bizarre Filipino kind of action-y, sort of supernatural horror thriller with a lot of people going like that, and lightning bolts coming out of their hands, and a guy fighting Satan who looks just like he fell ass backwards out of the old Mexican Santa Claus versus Satan movie. And they played Tremors, which is a great movie. And Tremors was the one I was going to get up and eat during. I was like, I've seen it a million times. I know it really well. I can miss some or all of Tremors and have a meal and survive a little bit. But I wound up staying, and boy, does that movie work great with an audience. Boy, is that a solid flick. It's one of those things where you can think you've seen a movie so much it's not entertaining anymore, or you're just a little tired of it. And you see it on the big screen, and it's like refreshes it in a really great way. Or you see it with an audience that really loves it and who cheers and laughs and applauds, and it's wonderful. And so that was great. I am going to cheat a little and look at this little slip and see. Let's see. We saw... Yeah, these clues are still so vague that it's not really telling me what I saw. Nosferatu the Vampire, the Werner Herzog Nosferatu came up, and there was a little bit of a switcheroo and a mix-up, and it started with Reel 2. Now, I haven't seen this movie since I was in college, so I didn't really remember it that well. And it comes up, and the people behind me are like, it's the wrong reel. They're starting with Reel 3. What's going on? It's the wrong reel. And eventually it stopped, and they put the first reel on, so we experienced the movie as it was supposed to play, and then they get to Reel 2, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is where we came in. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, Reel 2 would have been an okay place to start this movie. The stuff came before it, it's part of the story, but Reel 2 would have been an okay way to start. It was the English language version, beautiful print too. For the most part, all the prints that we saw were in beautiful shape. Only one or two are a little what they call faded. If you know film, or if you do know film, they're a little faded. The print of The Omen was kind of reddish. The print of Ghost Story was slightly warm, as they say, but all in all, everything looked great. Great projection staff, great trailers, all vintage trailers. It was beautiful. And it kept going, and it kept going, and it kept going. And I got a little sleepy here and there, and I would doze a little bit, but I kept waiting for the movie. It's so weird to be like at something that you paid to see, and you're excited to see as much as possible. And you're like, come on, movie I don't like. And that never really happened. There was never really a film that came up where I was like, oh, I hate this. And every time I thought I knew a movie, and a lot of the films people were guessing, were common titles. And what I love about Exhumed is that it was never, or very, very rarely was it anything anybody thought it was going to be. It's always something that was much more obscure, harder to see, deeper cuts. There was a movie called Sonny Boy that played. Have you heard about Sonny Boy? It's a movie that I'd heard of, and I've had the X-Rental VHS copy from an old video store in storage forever that I hadn't watched yet. And I had like this video store poster for a long time because it was David Carradine in a dress with a shotgun, which is something you don't see every day. And it came up, and I'm like, oh, wow, I've always heard about this. Now, really not a horror movie, more of an exploitation film. And Exhumed has a series they do every year annually called X-Fest that I've always wanted to go to, and much more my style of movie, exploitation, weird movies. This is really more of an X-Fest film, and I didn't really like it, but I'm glad I saw it. Paul L. Smith, who played Bluto in the Popeye movie and was the creepy gardener in Pieces and was the poor man's Bud Spencer, is in it. And he's sort of married to or living with David Carradine as a transvestite. And Brad Dourif is in it. And Sidney Lassick is in it. And they kidnap a baby and keep it as like a wild child and use it as an assassin. It's a really very strange film. So yeah, sort of glad I didn't really care for it overall, but I'm glad I saw it. And if I had watched it at home, I probably would have turned it off. But watching it with that crowd who was really into it and applauding and cheering and laughing and all that made it much more entertaining. Leviathan was a movie. We took a moment to have breakfast in the morning. So I went out during The Omen. The Omen came up. Omen's a great movie, but it's a movie I know relatively well. And I was really starving, and it was really getting to the point where, okay, some of these places are going to start closing pretty soon, and I'm going to get hosed, and I'm going to be upset that all I have is popcorn to eat all night. So we went out and had dinner, missed maybe half. No, actually not even. Excuse me, I get choked up when I talk about The Omen. My body's remembering what I had for dinner. We missed maybe 30, 40 minutes of The Omen. So I still saw the majority of The Omen when I went back. And eventually the theater quiets down. Like sometimes the crowd's really amped up and they're cheering and laughing and all this other stuff. And over a while, the mellow sets in and more people start falling asleep and more people decide, okay, I'm going to leave. Some people will go out and they'll have a hotel room or go to their car and sleep for the duration of a film or 2 or 3 and then come back refreshed for the morning because it's 24 hours. So it starts at noon. So you could go noon to midnight, get several hours of sleep and come back and still have hours and hours and hours of films left. It's 15 movies, some of which were kind of short. The Leopard Man, the Val Lewton produced Jacques Tourneur film, was second, I believe. That was great, but the crowd was a little too amped up and they were a little too laughy for my taste. I get a little annoyed when people laugh at just like everything or laugh at things because they're old. It's just so lame. So that kind of ruined The Leopard Man for me, unfortunately. But as the night went on, everybody calmed down and got that out of their system, and that was cool. And so, yeah, it's always interesting to see the part in the wee hours where it's like less and less people in the theater, and then the theater kind of fills up again and people want to be there for the end. The end is before the last film is traditionally where they stop and they do bring the lights up and they stop the projectors for a few minutes and they announce who were the people who won the contest for the most number of right answers. I think the most number right was like 11 or something like that, or better than half. They do it on a point system. If you get the right title in the right for the right movie, it's 2 points, and if you get the right title in the wrong slot, which is easy to do with some of these because a couple of these clues could point to a similar kind of movie, you get 1 point. So I think the top point getters were like 11 points or something like that. They stop it, they give out some really, really cool prizes, and then they play the last film. And in this case, it was a very, I guess it was a film that they had run recently that they usually don't, they try to not, with Exhumed in general, not play the same movies very often. With the 24-hour Horrorthon, the whole thing is they've never played a film twice and they don't want to. So it leads to a lot of really obscure stuff. And because they like to mix in the obscure stuff, they don't just play the greatest hits of all time and like run through them all and then never be able to play them again. So there still are films that they will play that, like they played The Exorcist last year, films that you'd think they would have by now, but they don't, and that's cool. And looking at the list of films, we were having breakfast in the morning. The House That Dripped Blood came up. I'm a huge fan of Amicus anthology films from the 70s, and that one came up, but it was kind of time for breakfast, and I'm like, well, it's a movie I know, so I'll sacrifice this one. And those of us who went out for breakfast, there were still like 3 or 4 films left, and we were trying to figure out what they were. And we were looking at what they hadn't played yet. And there are still some they haven't played that you would think they had. They have not played the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They've not played the original Friday the 13th. So there's still some they're saving to be a nice big surprise for fan favorite as they go. What else is left on this? I mentioned Leviathan. They played Leviathan. That's a movie that was playing when we came back from breakfast. And it's cool. The Colonial has a nice old lobby, and they have a door to the main theater, and it's got like a porthole in it, so you can look through and see what's on the screen. And I saw Peter Weller's face, and I'm like, and then Hector Elizondo, and I was like, oh, Leviathan, because I remember seeing it when it was that whole Abyss, Deep Star 6, Leviathan sweepstakes back in the late 80s. And at the time I watched it and thought, it's okay or whatever. Leviathan played great on that screen with that crowd. The print looked perfect. It was like being in the theater opening day. It was perfect. The color was perfect. Didn't look like an old movie. And the movie was just so much fun. And the end of the movie got these huge cheers. There's a moment at the very end, an incredibly 80s moment at the very end of the film, that the crowd just went nuts. It was so much fun and invigorating. There's nothing like seeing a movie with a good crowd, Seeing a horror movie with people who get scared by it, seeing a comedy or with people who are ready to laugh, or seeing an action movie with people who get impressed by action. I love it. I don't like talking. I don't like mocking. I don't like catcalling or, doing the mystery science theater thing. Leave that to the professionals. I just love people appreciating movies. So this is a great crowd for that. It's an incredible show. I highly recommend. We have people who come down from Canada for this, from all over the world, really, to come to this show. And it's once a year, and it's amazing. Now, I don't want to encourage too many people to do it because the tickets will sell out faster than I can get one. But it is absolutely worth going to. If you can see anything that Exhumed Films does, they do amazing work. They work with us very often at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Lehigh, Pennsylvania, where I work. And they do many, many shows with us, and they're great to work with. And amazing programming, amazing film archive and connections to get rare prints. It's all about film. It's all about 35 millimeter. Once in a great while, they'll do something not on film if that's the only way to do it. But otherwise, it's about the thrill of seeing these rare film prints all the time. So if you can get yourself to any of their shows in the greater Philadelphia, New York, Pennsylvania area, it is absolutely worth doing it. You will not regret it. If you can get to the Exhumed Films 24-hour Horrorthon, you really should. I cannot wait until next year. This year's is barely even beginning to fade as a memory, and it was so much fun. It goes by a lot faster than you think it will. I wound up never really sleeping. In the past, last year, there were a few films that came up where I was like, yeah, I'll check out. And I had like a little pillow. People bring in pillows and blankets and all that stuff. As long as you don't, like spill over your seat geography. This year, there really was nothing. I think toward the end, when Hellraiser 2 came up, I'm like, yeah, I've seen it all. I don't love the Hellraiser movies, so I'll try to just relax and doze. But I never really slept. And then after that, I went to the Mahoning Drive-In and I saw a Vincent Price double feature. And then I drove home for a couple hours. So it's been quite a few days. So forgive the mumble mouth, mush mouth, but you're used to that if you watch these videos. And Delirium, I just wanted to share the excitement of how cool the Colonial Theater in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania is, how cool Exhumed Films is, how cool my friends are, how cool seeing these amazing movies on 35 millimeter with an appreciative crowd is, and how cool the Exhumed Films 24-hour Horrorthon is. Kudos to all involved, and see you there next year.